Portland State University welcomes Congressman John Lewis to our 2004 commencement and is pleased to honor him for his leadership in the civil rights movement, for his commitment to peaceful resistance and social change, for his courage in the face of extreme danger, and for his never-ending belief in the principles of justice, equality, and opportunity for all. John Lewis is truly one of our nation's greatest heroes. At the age of 23, he was planning the 1963 March on Washington for Civil Rights and was recognized as one of the Big Six leaders of the civil rights movement. From 1963 to 1966, he served as chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was largely responsible for the peaceful sit-ins and activities of students in the struggle for civil rights. In 1965, John Lewis and Hosea Williams led more than 600 marchers across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, where they were met by state troopers who beat them with clubs and trampled them under their horses. He reacted by kneeling in prayer and peaceful resistance. That bloody Sunday, John Lewis was beaten unconscious and his skull was fractured. Yet, in the days and years of struggle that followed, he never lost his resolve or commitment to peaceful change. Congressman Lewis's public service career has included an appointment by President Jimmy Carter to lead Action, a federal volunteer agency. He was elected to the Atlanta City Council in 1981. Today, Mr. Lewis works to protect individual rights and liberties and promote peace as a member of Congress representing Georgia's 5th Congressional District. Whether it is fighting against adding discrimination into the Constitution, speaking out for the rights of Latino and immigrant workers, or calling for adequate health care for senior citizens, John Lewis continues to be one of our nation's most forceful and effective spokespeople for liberty and justice. 2004 marks the 50th anniversary of the landmark Supreme Court decision, Brown versus the Board of Education. This year also marks the 40th anniversary of the Mississippi Freedom Summer, when John Lewis coordinated efforts to organize voter registration drives, a time when people lost their lives to fulfill the constitutional promise of the right to vote. In this election year, Portland State University students, faculty, staff, and alumni joined the national call to action to register to vote and then exercise the right that John Lewis and others risked their lives to protect. Congressman Lewis, will you please come forward? For your lifetime work to ensure equality, opportunity, justice, and peaceful social change by the powers vested in me by the Oregon University System Board of Directors, I am pleased to award Congressman John Lewis the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters and welcome him as our 2004 Commencement Speaker.
Madam Provost, Mr. President, members of the board and chair of the board of directors, members of the faculty, distinguished guests, parents, family, and friends, and to the class of 2004, I am honored and delighted to be with you on this very important occasion. To each and every one of you receiving a degree today, I said, congratulations. Thank you so much for honoring me with an honorary degree. I will continue to do what I can to be worthy of such an honor. The president didn't tell you that I didn't grow up in a big city like Portland. I didn't grow up in a big city like Eugene. I didn't grow up in a big city like Salem or Chicago or New York or Buffalo or Atlanta. I grew up on a farm 50 miles from Montgomery, Alabama, near a little place called Troy. My father was a sharecropper, a tenant farmer. But back in 1944, when I was 4 years old, and I do remember when I was 4, my father had saved $300, and with the $300, he bought 110 acres of land. That is a lot of land for $300. On this farm, we raised a lot of cotton, lots of corn and peanuts, hogs, cows, and chickens. If you come and visit my congressional office in Atlanta or in Washington, the moment you walk through the door, the first thing this staff will offer you will be a Coca-Cola. Because Atlanta is the home of the Coca-Cola Company, Coca-Cola provides all members of the Georgia congressional delegation with an adequate supply of Coca-Cola products to be made available to our visitors. Every now and then, I may have a Diet Coke. The next thing the staff will offer you will be some peanuts. Because in the state of Georgia, like in the state of Alabama, we raise a lot of peanuts. And the Georgia Peanut Commission provides us with peanuts to give away. I don't eat too many of those peanuts. I ate so many peanuts when I was growing up in rural Alabama during the 40s and the 50s, I just don't want to see no more peanuts. Years ago, I would get on a flight and fly from Atlanta to Washington, or Washington back to Atlanta, and the flight attendant tried to push some peanuts on me, and I said, no, thank you. I don't care for any peanuts. Now, my wonderful friends, members of the class of 2004, you heard me say we raised a lot of chickens. I know you're very smart. I know you're talented. You've received a very good education. You have wonderful professors, wonderful teachers. But you don't know anything about raising chickens. Let me tell you what I had to do as a young child growing up in rural Alabama during the 40s and the 50s. It was my responsibility to care for the chickens. And I learned to raise chickens like no one else could raise chickens. First thing I had to do, mark those fresh eggs with a pencil, place them under the setting hen, and wait for 3 long weeks for the little chicks to hatch. I know some smart graduate is saying, John Lewis, why do you mark those fresh eggs with a pencil before you place them under the setting hen? Well, from time to time, another hen would get on that same nest, and there would be some more eggs. And you had to be able to tell the fresh egg from the eggs that were already under the setting hen. Do you follow me? You don't follow me, that's okay. When these little chicks would hatch, I would fool these setting hens. I would cheat on these setting hens. I would take these little chicks and give them to another hen. Or put them in a box with a lantern. Raise them on their own. Get some more fresh eggs. Mark them with a pencil. Place them under the setting hen. Encourage the setting hen to stay on their nest for another 3 weeks. I kept on fooling these setting hens and cheating on these setting hens. And when I look back on it, it was not the right thing to do. It was not the moral thing to do. It was not the political thing to do. It was not the most loving thing to do. It was not the most nonviolent thing to do. But I was never quite able to save $18.98 to order the most inexpensive hatchery or incubator from the Susan Roebuck store in Atlanta. We used to order everything. Now, as graduates, you're too young to remember. But maybe your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents will remember. We used to get the Cicero book catalog, this big book, thick, heavy, big book. And some people call it the ordering book. And other people call it the wish book. I wish I had this, I wish I had that. And I just kept wishing. But when I was about 7.5, 8 years old, one of my uncles had Santa Claus to bring me a Bible. And I learned to read the Bible. I wanted to be a minister. So with the help of my brothers and sisters and my first cousins, we would gather all of our chickens together in the chicken yard or in the chicken house like you would gather here in this hall. And we would have church. The chickens, along with my brothers and sisters and first cousins, would make up the congregation. And I would start speaking or preaching. And I noticed some of these chickens would bow their heads. Some of those chickens would shake their heads. And when I look back on it, they never quite said amen. But I'm convinced that the great majority of those chickens that I preached to in the 40s and in the 50s tended to listen to me much better than the majority of my colleagues listen to me today in the Congress. And sometimes I feel those chickens at least were a little more productive. At least they produce eggs. Well, that's another story. My friends, I know too well the long, hard road that is now behind you. Because you have completed this assignment in your life, you now realize the value of dream and seeing them realize. This is your day. Enjoy it. Take a deep, long, hard breath. And tomorrow, roll up your sleeves because the world is waiting for talented men and women to lead it to a better place. As leaders of the 21st century, you should keep in mind the words of Horace Mann, the father of modern education in America. He once said, we should be ashamed to die, ashamed to leave this world until we have made some contribution to humanity. So I said to you today, now is your time to make some contribution to humanity. And now through your leadership, you must help build an all-inclusive world community based on simple justice, an all-encompassing community that values the dignity of every individual, a community that I like to call the beloved community. Consider those two words, beloved community. Beloved means not hateful, not violent, not uncaring, not unkind. And community means not separated, not polarized, not locked in struggle. As you leave Portland State University, you cannot wait for someone else to create change. You cannot wait for the government to do it. Through your own efforts, through your own action, through your own creativity and vision, you have to do it. You must make our society a better place. You heard me say I grew up in the rural South. And as a young child, when I would visit the little town of Troy, visit Montgomery, visit Birmingham, visit Tuskegee, I saw those signs that said white men, colored men, white women, colored women. I saw those signs that said white waiting, colored waiting. As a young child, I tasted the bitter fruits of racism, and I didn't like it. I asked my mother, my father, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents, why segregation, why racial discrimination? And they would say, that's the way it is. Don't get in trouble. Don't get in the way. But at the age of 15 in 1955, when I was in the 10th grade, I heard about Rosa Parks. I heard the words of Martin Luther King Jr. on the old radio. A year earlier, when I was in the 9th grade in 1954, 14 years old, I heard about the Supreme Court decision in Brown versus the Board of Education. I was so deeply inspired that with some of my sisters and brothers and first cousins, in 1956, when I was 16 years old, we went down to the public library in the little town of Troy, trying to check out some books, trying to get a library card. And we were told by the librarian that the library was not for coloreds, but for whites only. But I went back to the Pike County Public Library in Troy, Alabama, on July 5th, 1998, for a book signing of my book, Walking with the Wind, and hundreds of blacks and white citizens showed up, and they gave me a library card. It says something about the distance we've come and the progress we made in America in laying down the burden of race. So I said to you as young graduates, 40 years ago this summer, another generation of young people, another generation of students got in the way. They got in trouble. It was good trouble. It was necessary trouble. Just think 40 years ago, in many parts of the Old South, from Virginia to Texas, it was almost impossible for people of color to register to vote. The state of Mississippi had a black voting age population of more than 450,000, but only about 16,000 blacks were registered to vote. There was one county in Alabama between Selma and Montgomery. The county was more than 80% African American, but there was not a single registered African American voter in the county. You had to pass a so-called literacy test. Interpret some section of the Constitution of Alabama, or Georgia, or Mississippi. On one occasion, a black man had a PhD degree. He flunked the so-called literacy test. He was told he could not read or write well enough. On another occasion, a man was asked to give the number of bubbles in a bar of soap. After the March on Washington in August 1963, after the bombing of the church in Birmingham in September 1963, where 4 little girls was killed, after President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act in 1964, more than 1,000 students went into the state of Mississippi trying to help people pass the so-called literacy test. And 3 young men that I knew, Andy Goodman, Mickey Schwerner, white, James Straney, African American, went out on a Sunday night of June 21st, 1964, to investigate the burning up of a black church. These 3 young men were arrested, taken to jail by the sheriff. Later that same night, taken from jail, turned over to the Klan, where they were beaten, shot, and killed. It was a sad and dark hour for the movement. But we didn't give up. We didn't give in. We didn't give out. We didn't get lost in a sea of despair. We kept the faith. We kept our eyes on the prize. These 3 young men didn't die in Vietnam. They didn't die in the Middle East. They didn't die in Eastern Europe. They didn't die in Africa or Central or South America. They died right here in our own country 40 years ago, trying to get all of our citizens to become participants in a democratic process. When you leave this great university, you must go out and find a way to get in the way, make our country and make our world a better place for all of these people. I tell you this story so you would know that the struggle for civil rights and human rights has been a long, hard road, littered by the battered and broken bodies of countless men and women, some paid the ultimate price for a precious right to vote. I came to the conclusion as a young student in 1962, when I was 22, and in 1963, that if you want to create the beloved community, the open society, the good society, if that is the end, if that is the goal, then the way, the means must be one of love, one of peace, one of nonviolence. That means and ends are inseparable. Maybe you, just maybe you, as leaders of the 21st century, will lead our nation and lead our world to a much better place. You have a mission, you have a mandate, and an obligation to do what you can. I want to close by telling just a little story. But before I do, you must be maladjusted to the problems and conditions of today. You must figure out a way to dramatize your issue. And then you must find a way to get in the way. Find your cause. Follow the dictates of your conscience. Find your compass and just go for it. Keep on pushing and keep on pulling. When I was growing up outside of Troy, Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery, during the 40s, when I was only about 4.5 or 5 years old, I had an aunt by the name of Seneva, and my Aunt Seneva lived in what we call a shotgun house. She didn't have a green manicured lawn. She had a simple, plain dirt yard. Sometime at night, you can look up through the holes in the ceiling, the holes in the tin roof, and count the stars. When it would rain, she would get a pail, a bucket, a tin tub, and catch the rainwater. My Aunt Seneva lived in a shotgun house. I know what I'm talking about because I was born in a shotgun house. Now, some of you may ask, what is a shotgun house? Well, in the nonviolent sense, a shotgun house, an old house, one way in, one way out, where you can bounce a basketball through the front door, and it will go straight out the back door. My Aunt Seneva lived in a shotgun house. From time to time, she would walk out into the woods and take branches from a dogwood tree and tie these branches together and make a broom. And she called that broom the breast broom. And she would sweep this dirt yard very clean, sometimes 2 and 3 times a week, but especially on a Friday or Saturday, because she wanted that dirt yard to look very good during the weekend. But one Saturday afternoon, a group of my sisters and brothers and a few of my first cousins, about 12 or 15 of us young children, were out playing in my Aunt Seneva dirt yard. And an unbelievable storm came up. The wind started blowing, the thunder started rolling, the lightning started flashing, and the rain started beating on the tin roof of this old shotgun house. My aunt became terrified. She started crying. She thought this old house was going to blow away. So she got all of us little children together and told us to hold hands. And we all started crying. We thought the house was going to blow away. The wind continued to blow. The thunder continued to roll. The lightning continued to flash. And the rain continued to beat on the tin roof of this old shotgun house. And we cried and we cried. And when one corner of this old house appeared to be lifting from its foundation, Mom had us to walk to that corner to try to hold the house down with our little bodies. When the other side appeared to be lifting, she had us to walk to that side. So we were little children walking with the wind, but we never, ever left the house. I said to U.S. graduate of Portland State University, the class of 2004, the wind may blow, The thunder may roll, the lightning may flash, and rain may beat on our old house. Call it the house of Portland State University. Call it the house of Oregon. Call it the house of Georgia. Call it the house of New York. Call it the American house. Call it the world house. We all live in the same house. We're one people. We're one family. We're one house. Just maybe our foremothers and our forefathers all came to this great land in different ships. But we're all in the same boat now. It doesn't matter whether we are black or white, Hispanic, Asian American, or Native American. We're one people. We're one family. We must create a world community at peace with itself and lay down the tools and instruments of war and violence and use our resources to build a better world. So my young friends, the leaders of the 21st century, and the graduates of this great university, you must walk with the wind and let the spirit of freedom, the spirit of justice be your guide. Thank you very much, and good luck and Godspeed.
Thank you, Congressman Lewis, for honoring us today with your words. Through your words today and your actions over the years, you have inspired all of us to be more active citizens in our community.